welcome back to this special edition of Newsnight, where we're focusing on our exclusive interview with Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. Let's get some reaction now. We're joined by the former governor of Imo State and former Minister for Commerce and Industry, Achike Udenwa, and by Shehu Gabam, the National Secretary of the Social Democratic Party. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight. It's been quite a long day, and globally, people have been reacting to this exclusive interview with Arise News, of course, with Mr. President. Let me begin with you, Mr. Former Governor. What are your thoughts on the interview overall? Did it meet your expectations in terms of the issues you expected the president to react to? Did you get the right answers that you wanted as far as issue of security, of course, corruption, and indeed the economy? What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I must congratulate Arise Television for being able to get an interview of Mr. President, because for some time we have not heard from him. And it was very gladdening today that we heard from him. We may not agree completely with all what he said, but he at the same time, he gives us a little insight into the way he's thinking. I heard some of the things he said. Governance is not easy. Your eyes must be open, your ears must be open at all times. At least the president has touched a few issues, especially bordering on security, bordering on the economy, and bordering on other sundry things. I think to some extent I will agree to some extent with him, but at the same time I believe the federal government has to do more. The federal government needs to do more as far as the security of this country is concerned.
All right, we'll get back to you. Let's bring in Shehu of the PDP into the discussion. Shehu,
SDP.
SDP. You heard what the former governor, former Minister Achike Udenwa said there, but in addition to what he said about federal government doing more, he says, as the president, says his major concern is actually the Northwest. And so he is giving the security forces the power to be ruthless. What's your sense of the president's statement?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say that this is long overdue. And this is not the first time the president have given decisive order to security agencies to do the needful, because there's no failure of intelligence, but there's a failure of implementing a decisive action, especially when intelligence was being generated, monitoring the excesses, the criminal behavior of some of these criminal elements that have taken over our forest, have engaged in criminal behavior, kidnapping innocent lives, killing innocent lives, using our facilities, our telecom equipments to negotiate, to collect ransom without any decisive action that is being taken. For me, I think even though it's getting late, if the president is really determined to get rid of this situation, he will get rid of it. The government have the instrument, have the equipment, have the capacity to deal with this situation decisively. I think there is a combination of sentiments and emotion in dealing with security challenges. And in the situation where you have a combination of sentiment and emotion in dealing with security situation, you find out that the issue have escalated, and it will go beyond what you can do immediately to solve the problem. The Northwest issue is very, very disturbing, like the president have said. These are people that belong to the same religion, the same culture, the same tradition. But it's not just the Northwest that have similar things. You know, you will find similar things happen before in the Northeast, where community are killing themselves. So it's a matter of fashioning out a very decisive policy or program that would deal with anybody who violates the law. The moment a government is condoning behaviors that ought to have been dealt with from the initial stage, the government will have a long way to go. And that would take a lot to deal with the economic situation of the country, the political situation of the stability of the country, and that will also affect the investment situation of the country, because nobody will bring his resources in a situation where his life and his investment is not being secured. So I expect the president to be more decisive in dealing with the situation nationwide. I was also privileged to see the president last year dishing out the same order to the service chief to be decisive, to take down anybody who is undermining, who is trying to compromise our territorial integrity. But that has not been done, from one excuse to the other. I think this time around, because it's getting on everybody's nerves, everybody is having sleepless night, and President understands clearly, in the absence of being very decisive, very merciless at a point, the situation will go beyond what anybody can do.
The studio here. You heard what Gabam said. Let's talk about the Southeast and Imo State specifically. You were a governor there, you know, for 2 terms. When the president says, especially when he reiterates that point that he made before, that the people who are fomenting trouble, whether it's IPOB, ESN, or whoever in the Southeast, will be, you know, met with the, you know, the language that they understand. What do you make of that? And when he also says, of course, in this interview, that IPOB, like a dot in a circle, has nowhere to go, even if the Southeast eventually succeeds in seceding. What do you make of that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the situation in the Southeast has to be handled with some care. It's not just a question of only threatening. I hope Mr. President will look at issues more closely. We have to find out first and foremost, what is the cause of the problem in the Southeast? It is when we know the cause, we will be able to know how best to approach it. It might not be a war situation all the time, you know, using a very strong hand. There has to be need also for some consultations, for some dialogue, especially with the youths. You can see that the situation in the Southeast is out of frustration. These youths are very frustrated, extremely frustrated. Many of them graduated over 5 years, 7 years, 10 years ago, and they have nothing doing. And because of that, the economic environment is even very harsh for them. There are not enough would I say, infrastructure to make them go on their own. And the culture in the Southeast is such that if a child leaves the university, for example, by the time he's coming out from the university, he has his junior ones to take care of. He's already expected to accept responsibilities. That is the culture in the Southeast. But unfortunately, this is a boy coming out from the university. He has no job. He has nothing. How does he cope to start looking after the younger ones, or start looking after the aged parents and all that? This is the problem. That's why I'm saying, before we use excess force, we must first of all find out what is the cause. The
root cause. All right, okay. We'll come back to you, Achike, the former governor. Shehu, the president also talked about bandits, you know, being treated as criminals, you know, and not being let scot-free. But you mentioned something very poignant when you said it's been before now a question of sentiments and emotions and condoning behavior. Can you throw more light on what you mean?
Okay, simple. When there is an absence of governance, particularly from the governors, who are sole with the responsibility of providing law and order in their states by the oath of office they have taken, they have killed the local government structures. They are definancing the state assembly. They are definancing the judiciary. The governors have turned to emperors. They don't take any responsibility. They don't create jobs in the states. They take security votes and go away. They don't know what happens in their local governments. The local government have no access to the governor, have no access to the commissioner, have no access to the local government chairman. They have nowhere to report intelligence, absolutely. And of course, the security agencies in the states, mostly you find out they are not in tandem with the governor, because the governor doesn't fund what he needs to fund to take care of the security of the states. He believed that only the federal government have the responsibility of providing security for everyone. In the local government, people find it difficult to buy a bag of fertilizer, which is extremely very expensive. Therefore, hunger is encroaching virtually everywhere. Crises have saturated virtually everywhere. So, and the bandit that you are seeing, if you look at the history, what led to the banditry, is the the wrestling of their cows and so on and so forth by their own fellow Fulani men that have been displaced as a result of crisis and so on and so forth. The biggest victims of cow wrestling and banditry are the Fulanis themselves. So, when you have a combination of people that have not been properly exposed in terms of having other options of survival, apart from the natural kind of trade and business they are used to, that is the cow rearing and so on and so forth. The next thing they can go into is of course violent, because they have nothing to do. The farming is no longer viable. They cannot afford to buy fertilizer and other things, and they have not been trained to do any other things. And there is no system of rehabilitation. You know, when there is a crisis, people have been displaced, their wealth have been taken away. It's a simple analogy. If you met a woman who is selling granite on the street, and you are trying to take away her granite, he will fight to die to protect that granite. Or you met a man who has a shop and selling in that shop, and you want to demolish that shop, he will prefer to die than for you to demolish that shop. So there's an absence of governance, and the governors are critically responsible for some of these issues that are ongoing. There's a great disconnection between the governors and the people of the states. There's a segregation between the governors and the people of the states. And you find out that these issues are very, very complex in nature. People that came together, campaigned for a governor, brought him into office, been elected. At the end of the day, the moment he settled, he began to hunt them out. He began to create issues that will create tension virtually everywhere. And you find out this thing degenerated into political issues, political crisis that is very difficult for anybody to settle. So most of the crisis that you see that is ravaging everywhere, plus the harassment issues crisis, are entirely manufactured by the governors, because they abdicated their responsibility. They forgot the fact that they need to govern their state. They need to live in their state. They need to create environment, very friendly environment in their state. They need to create a diplomatic process to handle both political, economic, and social issues in the state. And they need to deal with the educational sector of the state to enlighten their people on what is going on within the environment and the best they are doing to tackle the situation. It's a very complex situation, and there is no deterrence. Governor can do whatever he wants to do. Nothing can happen to him. So the best we could do to reduce this thing is, in this constitution that is going to review of the constitution, we must admit clearly that we have failed. Politicians have generated some of the crises that we're having today. Politicians are responsible. So some of the excess powers these governors have, we must find a way to reduce, so that they will be answerable to the country, they will be answerable to the people.
Thank you so much. Failure of governance, then that's according to Shehu Gabam, National Secretary, SDP. Thank you for joining us.